जय हिंद, नमस्कार। मैं अंबर जैदी स्वागत करती हूँ आप सबका एक बार फिर से हमारे आज के कार्यक्रम में। दोस्तों, एफसीआरए अमेंडमेंट बिल 2026 पर आजकल काफ़ी चर्चा है क्योंकि मानसून सेशन चल रहा है और हर तरफ इस अमेंडमेंट को लेकर सवाल है। इनफैक्ट अमेरिका से भी सवाल आया कि क्या भारत ने जो प्रपोज्ड एफसीआरए बिल है 2026 उससे रिलीजियस जो ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस है और एनजीओ है उनकी फ्रीडम इफेक्ट होगी या नहीं होगी। तो बहुत सारे सवाल हैं और बहुत सारे कन्फ्यूजन्स हैं। इनफैक्ट बिशप की भी मीटिंग रही होम मिनिस्टर अमित शाह जी से, जिसके बाद उन्होंने जेपीसी में जाने के लिए इस बिल को ले जाने के लिए कहा। तो थोड़ा सा समझेंगे कि आखिर क्या कुछ बदलाव आ रहे हैं जिसको लेकर इतना चर्चा हो रही है। तो इस पर बात करेंगे और इसको विस्तार पूर्वक समझने के लिए हमारे साथ मौजूद है सेवियो रोड्रिगेस, एडिटर इन चीफ गोवा क्रॉनिकल। बहुत बहुत स्वागत है आपका। जय हिंद, नमस्कार।
जय हिंद, अंबर।
Savio, you have been writing so much on this और ऑफ कोर्स आप खुद एक रिलीजियस माइनॉरिटी भी हैं। आप इस अमेंडमेंट को किस तरह से देख रहे हैं? हाउ डू यू सी दिस अमेंडमेंट और दिस बिल एज एन
So,
इंडिविजुअल?
Amber, to correct you in the aspect of the title that you use as a religious minority, I personally do not consider myself to be a minority in India for a very simple reason. I'm a son and daughter of Bharat Mata, and a mother does not distinguish between her children. There are
Absolutely
many
correct.
people. There are many people who
Hmm.
would like for people to think in minority and majority, and which is what certain of the laws over a period of time have been. But I'm not a minority. I see myself as a son of Bharat Mata, and I will always be that. So the way I look at a situation is purely from a perspective of an India perspective.
Hmm.
My faith, my religious belief is personal, it's related to my community, but my loyalty, my commitment, my dedication lies to my country, to my mother India. So that is the onset of what I want to say. Now, what is the FCRA problem? And why is it important for people across communities to understand? Firstly, the FCRA amendment is an amendment to an already existing bill where certain measures have been added on to it, which further make the transparency more clearer and more defined, which is what really the FCRA amendments are all about. Now let's come into a very simple fact which I put out earlier in the morning. Is when the FCRA bill was brought into play about 10 years ago, you had the foreign funding coming into India to NGOs ranging at about 15,000 crore annually. Okay, there was about roughly X amount of NGOs that were around, and right now, so look at it this way: 60% of the NGOs that existed before were privy to 15,000 odd crores that were coming annually. In 2025, that number is 22,953 crores, 963 crores that have come to NGOs via foreign funding. So, in actuality, the FCRA has not stopped foreign funding. But what it's done is it's streamlined foreign funding. So, 60% of the questionable NGOs that existed do not exist right now. What you have, so look at it from a statistical point of view. 60% has come down. But the remaining NGOs that were transparent, that follows the strictures and the guidelines that were set under the FCRA, were now privy to getting more funds to do better work. Are you getting what I'm saying? So there were many NGOs that existed before. They were getting about 15,000 crore. 60% of those NGOs have come down in 2025, around the last 10 years. So if you go by the figures of 2025, the number of foreign funding coming into India, most of it being from the US, is 22,963,000 crores. So NGO money has gone up. FCRA has not dampened the foreign fund flowing in. All it has demanded is strictures and accountability of the usage of the fund and the source of the fund. Those that were involved in money laundering, those that were involved in other questionable activities were shut. The same thing now. The amendments, even now, are looking for transparency. Yes, there is one particular clause which has created a bit of a concern, which has to do with the confiscation of property if they do not comply to the guidelines that have been set. That also is debatable, but you cannot take the throw the baby out with the hot water. No, that's the saying that they say. So you're just throwing the baby out. So what is FCRA? FCRA, firstly, is not targeting the Christian minority at all. It is, in fact, a blanket law across religious or across NGOs that may or may not be religiously connected. That's what it is,
Absolutely correct.
right?
Yeah.
So when you have strictures, now when people start looking at it from a religious point of view, it's when it's wrong. It is not a religious based law at all. It is a national security based law. Now, countries like America itself have got FARA. FARA also, and many other countries follow a rigid
And of
guideline
course,
when it
US
comes to.
itself regulates the foreign funding, and US
Correct.
Congressman Riley, he expressed the concern that Christian minority will also face the
So,
similar prosecution as Muslims are facing in India.
correct. No, so I'll come to Riley in about 30 seconds or so.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what is important to understand is that FARA, which is the American version of FCRA in India, is the same guideline which monitors foreign funding coming into America. Likewise, you have this in other countries as well. So, from a democratic point of view and a policy point of view, I don't see where the confusion is. The second most important part is one of the leaders of the concern has been the Catholic Church. And I have been discussing with some of the priests and some of the leaders in the Catholic Church that as an institution, the Catholic Church has been known for its administrative capabilities, for its records, for its transparencies, not only in India, but other parts of the world where their institutions exist. So why would they have a problem with transparency? If at all there is a problem with transparency, it would be with those institutions that are having evangelical lot, where most of the money is coming from the evangelical groups to put into India. They are busy working on harvesting of souls, which is technically what their game plan is. Under the guise of preaching the gospel and preaching the message of Jesus, what they are doing is harvesting souls. That's not what the Catholic Church is doing at this point of time. This is what is being done by evangelicals. So the Catholic Church has to, in fact, support the transparency and the administrative requirements that are there in the FCRA bill. Certain questions that may be there can be addressed and the law can be made better, but it can happen through dialogue. No? It cannot happen by a fear psychosis that this is anti Christian, this is anti Muslim. It doesn't work that way. Because at the end of it, whether you're Christian, Muslim, or Hindu, Amber, the fact of the matter is that if your country is not secure, you cannot profess your faith either,
True.
right? So that's the problem. Now, why has the US representative Riley made a statement? Now, that is very interesting. Riley comes from a constituency called West Virginia. Okay. Now, when the Indian government way back in 2014, 2015 started to track NGOs having questionable funds coming to them, and which is why many of them were shut down or asked to shut down because it didn't comply to the guidelines that were set. Most, when I mean most, 75% of the fundings coming through to Christian NGOs came from the state of West Virginia. Okay. And Riley comes from the state of West Virginia. So it is very clear that the evangelical lobby, Riley is a Catholic, but what is surprising again is that the evangelical lobby in the US has a huge concern with the new amendments that are happening to the FCRA laws, right? Now, if that was to apply to the US, they already have a FARA with them, so I don't understand why are they concerned about it. So, in order to understand why they're concerned about it, you need to understand that the US deep state, which does work with the CIA and some religious organizations, not all, can only bring about a, a, a change or a sort of mobilization through a religious indoctrination or a religious control. And these are footprints that we are seeing in India over a period of time. You've seen things changing in Punjab. You've seen things changing in Andhra Pradesh. You've seen things changing in certain parts of Tamil Nadu, the Northeast. You are seeing these conflicting areas where change in religious demographics are going to create conflicting religious interests between communities. And in this case, the US is most concerned with the Christian community. Which is why, if you remember, Sheikh Hasina, 1 month before she was ousted, very categorically had stated in a meeting with her party members that a white man, in that who was Donald Lu, which was later revealed,
Yes, I
had
remember. Yeah,
categorically told her that they want to create a Christian nation out of parts of Bangladesh, Myanmar,
and Northeast. Yeah,
Northeast Manipur and Mizoram. In much the same way, they are looking at creating a Christian, sort of uh, conclave together with an ability to bring some sort of uh, opposition to the current framework, social framework that India has. Okay,
yeah.
yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, just wanted to add one thing that later US taken a U-turn and they said we will directly contribute or transfer the money to the government of India for the welfare of Christian. Why they taken U-turn after
I don't know.
expressing
I don't know
concern?
whether Marco Rubio is taking the U-turn or not. But
Hmm.
what Marco Rubio is certainly doing is trying to put out the fire that Riley Moore had lit. Riley Moore has actually given out the game plan that or the playbook that the US lobby and the US deep state had. Now,
Yeah,
Marco Rubio is not somebody I trust, and I don't trust anybody in the American establishment as far as India is concerned. I'm
true.
being brutally honest. I'm not going to get weak in my knees because Marco Rubio said that. I believe Marco Rubio was covering up for the slip of tongue that Riley Moore had as far
Yeah, I
as
just
the
wanted to understand why they taken U-turn. Yeah,
yeah. No, it's
of
not a
course
new
we know
turn.
the
I think
objective of the deep state.
he's saving them
Hmm.
because if there is one thing I am certain of is that the white supremacist thought process of Donald Trump is exactly what is being played out and what he wants played out in India. And for that, he needs religious breakups. He needs a religious confrontation. So Marco Rubio, in my opinion, is only covering up the slip of tongue that Riley Moore has done.
I want to, and but I also like we seen India's response. It was equally, important. India's position is essential, and India said that of course it is our domestic legislative matter, and there is a very strong sovereignty argument here. So we don't interfere in U.S. internal affair. Now, they come and expressing concern and creating such narrative on this FCRA amendment. But I want to understand, like, if you understand from the local political perspective, we've seen a lot of different. Opinion by the opposition leaders, Shashi Tharoor, and so many different leaders from the oppositions. How do you see the local or domestic political point of view?
So the domestic point of view is very simple. They want to create fear in the minorities. They use the CAA to do just that. They use the farm laws to do just that. Now they're using the FCRA to do just that. The major focus of the FCRA. Now look at this very interestingly. Every single religion, every single NGO that gets foreign money into its NGO comes under the guidelines, right? So why is it why one minority community coming up strongly against the FCRA, which is the Christian minority in this case? Which is what I said earlier. I am not able to understand why the Catholic Church is incensed with the fact that FCRA is only going to ensure transparency and not target. The image or the message that they're giving out to people within the community is that the Christians are going to be targeted, the churches are going to be targeted. And I think that is a bit of an exaggeration of the reality of the on what is on the ground and what is that law. After all, an Indian Christian is as much as an Indian as a Hindu. Same with an Indian Muslim, which is why I said the Indian Christian understands the national aspects of what is required of an Indian Christian. A Christian in India owes his loyalty to the religious institutions outside of India. But an Indian Christian knows that the law of the land, the constitution of India, is supreme. So today, the Christian community is getting incensed by what is happening. Yes, they have some questions, and rightfully so. Everybody should have questions, right? But are you telling me that religion comes before your nation? I'm not willing to accept that. I'm sorry. Many in the Christian community will call me names, and they have called me names before. It doesn't matter. What matters is that the country is above everybody else. And in right now, the usage of foreign fund in this country, there is a questionable usage of foreign funds happening in this country. In 2015, there was an organization, Compassion International, that was sending money in and was sort of investigated for very large scale conversion activities. In 2015 itself, they got 45 million US dollars. Like that, there are many such organizations. The mere fact in 2025 you had 22,963 crores, Amber, is the question that we should be asking ourselves: where is that money going?
True.
Right? I'm not saying all the money coming into this country is going towards destabilizing the country. That's not what I'm saying. But
No,
I'm
but
saying that there's foreign.
Savio, this is the biggest question in entire debate when it comes to the national security perspective. I think perhaps this is the biggest question we should be debating around this topic because nothing comes before national security.
Correct. And that's what I'm saying. So, where is 22,963 crore last year going? Shouldn't the government know where that money is going? Shouldn't the people of India know where that money is going? Is that money being used to destabilize infrastructure projects? Is that money being used to what you would say, create a woke culture in the students of this country? Is that money is that money going to create division amongst religious communities in this country? Is that money being going to demonize Sanatan Dharma? Is that money going to create conflict between Hindus, Muslims, and Christians and other religions? Don't we need to know 22,000 crore? Are you telling me that foreign institutions or foreign grants coming to this country does not have an ulterior motive? Are you saying that people are giving you money out of goodness of their heart? We know organizations that are large, big organizations, including guys like Bill and Melinda Gates right now, the Gates Foundation. There are so
Yeah.
many questions around the fundings that have come and the grants that they have given. And like them, there are so many others. George Soros himself funded so much of money into startups in India, almost 90 million US dollars. And George Soros' Open Doors Foundation, which is the NGO, has been funding and giving grants to so many such different organizations. Don't you think we need to know what is the purpose when we know George Soros is an economic terrorist? He's working towards creating anarchy in India. He himself said it at Davos that I have set aside a considerable amount of money to fight nationalism. This country is rising on nationalism. So when George Soros starts putting money into NGOs, wouldn't we need to, as Indians, know where that money is coming and where it's going? That is what the FCRA is all about. The FCRA is not about your religion. Please Keep your religion at home and within your community. But if there is a national security issue, then I'm sorry, that overrides every other religious demands that you would have.
True. Yeah, Savio, looking at India and US relation, and we cannot ignore the larger diplomatic context that India and US relation that today encompasses defense, technology, trade, investment, and Indo-Pacific, and so many other things like critical technologies and all. So, do you think that will it affect India-US relationship if the
I don't believe.
disagreements over FCRA legislation or?
No, so I believe that the US is subtly using various other means to to pressurize the Indian government to ensure that the amendments that have been brought on FCRA are slightly deviated from the original plan. I believe that's the pressure that the US government is using. Will it
Okay.
impact the trade relationships and the bilateral relationships that India and US has? The answer is no. Because please understand, it is not India that requires the US market. It is the US that requires the Indian market. So when we are negotiating with America, we are not the ones bowing our heads down. We are looking at each other from an equal length. We are there to see it's a win win situation. But yes, the US deep state and certain religious leaders in the US want to ensure that Christianity, particularly the evangelical Christianity, continues to spread extensively in India because they want a Christian nation in South Asia. It's as simple as that.
Now we can say that finally it will pass from the from the parliament this time.
I don't know as of now what is the status, but I believe it is going to come up for discussion on the 12th. I also believe that the Christian leaders who met with the Home Minister yesterday,
Amisha, yes,
Amit
yeah,
Ji,
hmm.
that they've asked for it to be sent to the JPC, a Joint Parliamentary Committee.
Yes,
They
they
have
demanded.
come,
But again,
right?
Savya, we know that if we demand, if any bill goes to the JPC, what it means. So, do you think that will be transferred to the JPC or it will be debated in the
I
parliament?
believe that the government, particularly Prime Minister Modi and Home Minister Amit Shah, are very clear on the objective of the FCRA. And I'd
Okay.
like to reiterate it to all the people listening to
And the
your
timing
show
is
as well.
also very important.
Yeah. The purpose of the FCRA is already a bill. What is happening right now is an amendment to an
True.
existing bill. What is that amendment? That amendment is a further tightening of the transparency measures that are required from the numerous NGOs that exist in the country. Now, I'll give you examples of certain NGOs that would who were who were questioned for their funds. So, what did they do? The NGO opened an event management company. Okay, I don't want to name the NGO right away, but I'm telling you there was a very popular international NGO that was under question in India. That NGO, in order to get more money and not come under the radar of the governmental watch, decided to open an event management company. So they would do these events and roadshows all over the country, and money, that is the international funds, would come into this event management company and therefore avoided scrutiny. So the amount of money that came into this event management company was somewhere around 50 crores, while the amount of money that went into the normal NGO was lesser, right? So there are many avenues where certain questionable funders are sending money into this country to use it. Now, every infrastructure project, every questionable protest that is happening in India, some are genuine and some are really questionable by the sheer nature of it, has to have a certain amount of funding. Please see the current protest of the Cockroach Janata Party. While the students certainly had a right to protest, I don't think the students were involved in the violent protest at all. I think there were certain nefarious elements that came and hijacked that protest and wanted to create chaos and anarchy. Now, to create a chaos and anarchy, there is a certain amount of money that's required. There are questions being raised on the money, on the leaders of the CJP, the kind of lifestyle they've been leading, where the flats that they have been staying, where is this money coming from? And these questions are currently under investigation. So I'm sure no foreign funder sending money into India is doing it out of the goodness of his heart. There is always, always an ulterior motive. And the ulterior motive is to control Indian population because they believe they can divide India very easily on the basis of religion and caste.
True. So, friends, let us not reduce this debate to India versus America. And that would be the, in fact, the easiest way and the least intelligent way to look at it. But the real debate is about finding the balance between sovereignty and freedom, national security and civil society regulations and accountability. India has, every right to regulate the foreign contributions, and whichever is entering in the country. At the same time, a strong democracy must ensure that regulation does not become arbitrary power. And America too, it must recognize that India is a sovereign democracy, and whose parliament has the constitutional authority to legislate the country. So, thank you, Savio, for joining our show and sharing your valuable inputs on the show. Thank you so much. Jai
Thank you
Hind, Jai
for
Bharat.
having me. Jai Hind.
Thank you. Thank you.